And in addition to being a visiting assistant professor of higher education, I am also the director of diversity and equity inclusion initiatives here at the Graduate School of Education and Human Development, of which we call GSEHD. And I want to remind anyone that came in late, please feel free at any time, if you have any questions, to utilize the chat, and our friends from Student Life will be there to assist you. We don't have much time today, and I've already taken up 10 minutes, so let's just get right into it, no? Here's the agenda for today. What we'd like to do is first talk about what is a contract, all right? How do we get to a contract? And then I have two problems for you, one which you'll do with me, and the one which I will release you to do in small groups to handle. And those questions are, is your college admissions offer a contract? And then, is the course syllabus a contract? We know many of you will be going into higher ed. Some of you might be going into counseling and you'll need client agreements. Some of you might be special ed teachers and you might need agreements on an IEP. Many of you will be school teachers, classroom teachers, the heart and soul of our American system. And you might have a union contract. There might be many different agreements that you have. And that's why we're trying to investigate this concept here today. So, because I am a lawyer and I'm barred in DC, I must say a little bit of a misnomer or a little bit of a caveat that this is a lesson, not legal advice, right? So for anyone that has been scammed lately looking for a PS5 or an Xbox, I still haven't got mine. Please don't go to your unfortunate seller and say, Dr. Wright said that this was a contract. Us lawyers are good at protecting ourselves, and I would definitely advise you to get legal advice. But with that said, what is a contract? And what we want to do right now is I want to have just one or two people. Feel free to unmute yourself. Anyone that doesn't feel like doing that can easily participate in the chat. Forget anything legal. Some of you might be lawyers. Just from a plain reading of it, if you were talking to a very well-educated 15-year-old that just didn't know what a contract is, how would you explain in your own words, what is a contract? Can I get one or two people to just unmute and kind of join this conversation with me? Anyone else, feel free to engage in the chat.
I just contribute that it's a written or spoken agreement. It can be either one.
Written or spoken. And who's speaking? I'm sorry, I like to get to know.
I'm sorry. Yeah, my name is Haley Puddle.
Haley Huddle, from where?
I'm from Richmond, Virginia, but I've lived and worked in DC some, but I'm excited to come back to DC. It's been a bit of time since I've been there. I've been in the Middle East for a little while.
Oh, okay, yes. So we're excited to have you back, Haley. And what she said was that it's a written or unwritten agreement, right? And I think the key word there is probably, this is an agreement, right? Something that two or more parties enter into that they hope will be binded to, right? Many of you, all of you have professional experience, and the number one sort of animating agreement in a capitalistic society is that payment agreement, right? And you had to do a contract to get into that. Can I get one more student, if you don't mind, one more brave soul to just unmute and engage with us in your own words? What is a contract?
Dr. Wright?
Yes, sir.
An agreement between two adults.
An agreement between two adults. And who's speaking?
James Nichols.
From?
Manassas, Virginia.
Manassas, Virginia. Yeah, one of my old stomping grounds when I was in undergrad and my frat was running around crazy all over the place. Great place, Manassas. James, don't unmute yet. I want to engage with you just a little bit.
Sure.
Why adults? Why was that a important part of your definition?
Children are unable to be held liable for an agreement that they cannot make legally.
Okay, so there are certain people that cannot make agreements. Back in the wayward days, women couldn't enter contracts, and thank the Lord, or whoever you serve, that we no longer live in those worlds. But James is 100% right on that, right? So let's dig into it. In a regular class, we might engage in a little bit more discussion, but for time's sake, let me give you kind of the boilerplate elements of what I see as a contract. Some of you may be familiar with this, others may not. So here is the basic formula of a contract. A contract consists of an offer, an acceptance of that offer on identical terms, This thing I'll explain called consideration. And in legal terms, K stands for contract. So, if you learn nothing, you learn that in legal terms, when you see K, it means contract. So I'll just go over that one more time. A contract, the formula, has an offer, has an acceptance of that offer on equal terms, has this thing we call bargain for exchange, which is known in the law as consideration, has nothing to do with the actual word consider, so don't go there. And those three things equal into a contract, all right? And now what I want to do is I want to go through each of these elements of a contract individually, and then we'll pause to see if anyone has any questions. Sound about right? All right. So the first part of a contract is an offer. Someone agrees to provide something or some service for some price. And the price doesn't have to be monetary value, but it has to be something. And you're like, Dr. Wright, that sounds really philosophical. It is and it's not, right? If I decided to take this pen and I said, James, take this pen. He said, well, how much is it? Right? And I said, well, all I want is your tender love and care. That could be considered a contract. Now, if I decided and I said, James, just take the pen, that's not a contract because it's a gift, right? So that's what we mean by an exchange of something for value. And it starts with an offeree deciding to give that to someone, the offer, the first part of a contract, all right? And we're going to get into what an offer is. If an offer is given and it's accepted, then we go forward. If it's not accepted, then the offerer becomes the offeree, and that becomes the contract, right? So this next part is extremely important, that we move from the offer to the acceptance, right? So once there is an offer, there needs to be acceptance on identical terms. If there is a modification to the acceptance, if there is no acceptance, then we sometimes go back. The person that was offered the chance to accept becomes the offerer itself, and the person that originally gave the offer now has the chance to accept. Or maybe it's on like terms, the PlayStation for $500, I agree to pay $500. That's an offer and that's an acceptance, right? Most lay people will think that that's it. Dr. Wright, offer, acceptance, $500 for the item. That's all we need for a contract, but not so. And you're about to be educated to that here. The third part of the contract, which mostly only lawyers know, but we're going to try to explain it to you in a way, is what's known as consideration. Consideration. And the way I would explain consideration is the old legal language of the bargain for exchange or a promise for a promise. So in addition to the offer here, take this pen, and in addition to the acceptance, yes, I will take this pen, there needs to be an additional promise which sort of seals the agreement. Maybe it's, I promise that I will not give this pen to anyone else in exchange, bargain for exchange, for the fact that you'll be here to get the pen by 5 p.m. A promise for a promise. Maybe it's, if it's a real estate contract, I promise to pay this down payment and this mortgage on the condition that you promise to get to a 700 credit score. And in exchange for you getting to that 700 credit score, if someone else with a 700 credit score comes about, I'm not going to give them the house. A promise for a promise. So now that we have that, we have the basic elements of a contract. First, an offer. Someone decides that they want to give something and they state or solicit a price for that thing. The acceptance of that offer on identical twin terms. And then the consideration, which for you, all you need to know, that is a promise for a promise to seal the deal for that contract. And that will make a contract. Consideration could be any value. It could be a penny. It could be just a promise. Please don't think that, well, Dr. Wright, a lot of students say, well, what this looks like is we have two contracts, right? We have the principal promise and the next promise. It's not that complicated. It's simply that we don't want people who have made an offer and acceptance to be able to go and make the same offer and the same acceptance to other people as well. Just threw a lot at you. In fact, we just explained in about 3 or 4 slides, but it takes about 3 or 4 weeks to explain in law school. So if you just got that, great. If not, we're at the point where you can ask any questions. Any questions? And I'll put it back up just so we can see it. Any questions?
I do have a question.
Yes, ma'am. Who are you, where you're from, and state your question.
Okay, I'm Cass. I'm from Chicago, but I'm in State College. I actually go to Penn State.
Oh, wow, we are.
Yes, Penn State. My question is, for contracts, would you have to sign, like you would have to give a signature to make it official? Because you said promises, but that doesn't necessarily mean that a promise would be upheld. So would you have to sign for an official contract?
Yes. So the general answer is the same answer that anyone will give to any law question. It depends. The better answer, however, is there are certain contracts that American law says must be in writing, and there must be a notification or at least a signature, such as real estate contracts. Every other contract, most other contracts, I should say, it's up to the offerer, right? So if you offer and you're saying, well, I want to sell the Xbox for $500, and to seal the deal, we need a signature. Now, part of the signature could be part of the consideration, right? For your signature, I will hold this item for you. But to answer your question, no, not all contracts do not generally need to be signed, but some do. Good question, Cass. One more. If you have it, don't be shy. We're here to learn. We're here to engage. Are there any further questions before I have a task for you? So what I tell all my students, and what really sort of solidifies the teacher-centered approach we have here at GSEHD, is we're not just learning theory, we're learning to apply it. So before we go to apply it, if you have any questions, please do ask. Silence is not neutral. Silence indicates to me that you've got, well, I'll say, go ahead.
What happens if this is James?
James from
what happens if Manassas, Virginia?
Oh, how you doing, James?
I'm okay. What happens if the consideration they're inadequate, like a penny for $100? It's an agreement, but the consideration are unequal. They don't, can it still be upheld?
Yes, that's completely fine. In America, somewhat paradoxically, depending on your political persuasion, we have freedom of contract. So you can decide to give your services for a minimum wage, you can decide to give your services for a penny, and the court's not going to step in and then try to, I guess, parentistically say that that's not adequate. So as long as it's not coerced, right? So both the offer and the acceptance needs to be uncoerced. It could be solicited, but not coerced. It would be held up. Good question, James. All right, well, if there are no other questions, why don't we move on to a question I have for you. Is your college admissions offer, and let's say A, because there's several people here and you're all, I think, have offers, which is good. Is that a contract? Is your college admissions offer a contract? Based on what you've known so far, no one's going to hold you to this. There's no test at the end. There's no grade for this class. I just want you to think about, is your college admissions offer a contract? Anyone brave enough to unmute and kind of work through this question with me using the elements that you've learned? If not, anyone want to just give an answer and see if they're right?
We've got one brave soul who answered in the chat.
Okay.
Christine, not trying to call you out, said that she would say yes. There's a promise to provide an education on GW's side and a promise to participate and pay on the student side.
Okay. Okay. So we've got a few people agreeing with Christine in the chat, and Christine says yes. Anyone want to say no? Anyone thinks it's no? Anyone want to play devil's advocate based on the information you have in front of you? Or are we pretty solidly on yes? Okay, well, I tell you what, Christine, you're not necessarily right, but you're not necessarily wrong. The best answer is always on this level, it depends. But let me say why I think a yes for this question. And again, the question is the college offer a contract is a little bit more yes than no. So there is an offer, right? After you apply, there's an offer of admissions, and it usually comes contained with a financial aid package of some sort, maybe, maybe not, right? And you're solicited to accept that offer. And then typically there is some consideration, right? For those of you that have worked in higher ed, that might be an enrollment deposit, right? You offer admissions, the school, George Washington, you accept. In order to hold your space, you pay $500 that's put towards your tuition bill, and you promise to come, and they promise to hold a seat for you, right? So in that case, it's a contract. Does the deposit need to be there, Dr. Wright? Some of you might ask. No, because consideration doesn't actually need to be of something of value, right? So you could simply say, George Washington offered, I've accepted. The consideration is I promise to show up, and they promise to have a slot for me. And that would be a contract, even without the security deposit. So we have offer, we have acceptance, and we have consideration, which is the bargaining for exchange. Any questions so far? Any questions about that? Any questions about why Christine was right? Anyone thinking no and wants to sort of argue with me?
I had a retroactive question.
Yes, ma'am. State who you are, where you're from, and ask your question.
Hi, I'm Caitlin Vanderwolf. I'm coming at you live from New Orleans, but I'm originally from Philadelphia. And
oh, wow. Two of my favorite places.
Yeah, it's storming rain right now. So we'll see if I
stay safe, stay safe, stay safe.
Yeah. But anyway, so my question was, does there have to be some sort of like either legal or just otherwise consequence if a contract is broken to be considered a contract?
Wow, so that is an amazing question, which would probably take the rest of the half an hour to answer adequately. So if you don't mind, let me give you an inadequate answer that I hope will lead to further discussion either in the Q&A in your small groups. The general answer is yes, because any law needs a remedy to be a law. Now, if the question was, if there is no remedy to the broken contract, is the thing of itself not a contract? No, it's just an unenforceable contract, right? We have those, right? Unenforceable contracts would be contracts for contraband or illegal substances, such as illegal drugs. Unenforceable contracts would be those entered into by people that don't have the ability to contract. I think James earlier mentioned minors. I would throw in there those that don't have the mental capacity for which the court would say that they can actually do it. Maybe someone suffering from dementia, unfortunately. So there doesn't necessarily need to be a remedy, but without remedy, we have no law. Great question. Further questions? So is everyone ready for the main event?
Sorry, I have like one last little question.
No problem. I'm just going to say, after this question, Monique, we're going to go to a small group. So just want to tee that up for you. Please state who you are, where you're from, and ask your question.
Hi, I'm Jessica. I'm from Fairfax, Virginia, but I kind of split my time between Richmond and Fairfax. So my question was like kind of thinking for like student athletes and students who might have something else of value that they might be providing to the school. If they were to then like need to like withdraw or defer, would that be breaking the contract, or would that be something that was like built in?
So within contracts, once you have a contract, so you have the offer, you have the acceptance, you have the consideration, both parties can choose at any given time to modify the contract. right? We have freedom of contract in America, so you can do that. I think your question is, look, what if I did early admission to North Carolina, but I really wanted to go to Duke, and Duke actually said, let's go. Would that be a violation of the contract? Well, let's say this. It's not necessarily a violation of the contract, but anytime you have a contract and a party moves back, there's something that could be lost, and that's the consideration, right? So if there's no numeric value, the only thing you're losing at that point is the fact that you don't have that seat at North Carolina, right? So if Duke decides, well, yeah, you can't just go back and say, well, no, you gave me that seat, I need it back. Typically what happens is you may lose a deposit. GSEHD doesn't have a deposit, but you understand what I'm saying, that if you pay that $500 and decide then that you don't want, to go, and it happens the other way too. Let me not just make the big bad consumer as the one that benefits from contracts. If you are a student and you paid a deposit and all of a sudden you get there and school doesn't have a slot for you, that is also a broken contract. Great question, Jessica. All right, we ready to do this in small groups? So here's today's challenge. Having understood and now knowing the elements of a contract, and please, if you want to take any notes, I'll just pause for a little bit. Feel free to jot that down there. I want you to answer this question. Is the course syllabus a contract? Is the course syllabus a contract? So this is a graduate school, so all of you have gone through some type of undergraduate experience. And the question is, we used to call back both at Norfolk State and at Penn State, the first week of classes Silly Week or Syllabus Week, right? Because people were just shopping and it was a syllabus there. When you get that syllabus and you make the decision to stay in that course rather than transfer out, is that a legally binding contract based on the elements that Dr. Wright has given you? Now, some of you, we may have a contract law expert out there that could go into details. I don't want you to dominate the jury room, right? Based on the elements that I have given you, offer, acceptance, consideration, which is bargain for exchange, the challenge is the course syllabus a contract? What we want you to do now is we're going to put you in small groups and ask you to generate group by group based on the elements that we've given you answer to this question, all right? But before we do that, do you have any questions? Any questions, concerns, things you want to know, things you want to ask before we go ahead and put you in small groups? No? Remember, silence is not neutral. Silence indicates that you understand the elements and you're ready to tackle this, or you might even have an answer that you're ready to fight with your group over. Can I put the live slide up briefly? Yes, in fact, well, since you're going in small, I was going to say I'll leave it up, but you're in small groups, so it doesn't matter. Any other questions? If not, Monique, take it away. You'll have about 9-10 minutes, and when we come out, we'll hear your answers, and after that, we'll go to general Q&A to answer any questions you have, okay?
Okay, Dr. Wright, just 1 second while I set up the rooms.
No problem. And students, if you need to take, you won't have this slide up in the breakout room. So if anyone needs to jot down some quick notes, please feel free to do so. And again, the question is the course syllabus, regardless of the course, counseling, human development, curriculum design, clinical work, foundations of pedagogical teaching, whatever it may be, is that a contract between you and the professor for class? And let me stop talking. I'm giving away some term thing. And again, we'll do this for about 8 or 10 minutes. As soon as you come out, we'll hear 1 or 2 groups. I'll give you what I think my answer is, and then we'll progress right after that to general Q&A for the rest of the time here. So you can ask any questions of myself as a faculty member, as director of diversity, or any questions of our wonderful staff from Student Life. Great to have everyone here today. Really hoping that you join us. feel free to sneak in some questions in the chat if you want, while you're still thinking and we're getting you into groups. If not, you're gonna have a very short amount of time to answer this question in groups. So.
Okay, the rooms are created.
All right, let me stop sharing this. Ooh, okay, how did that go?
Wonderful.
Just
Yeah.
here doing the
They seem
chat.
excited. I think we still
Good.
have one student with us who needs to join their breakout room, Latoya.
There we go.
Look, there's a John Barbowski. I don't know if they, in trying to get to the breakout rooms, they might have got kicked out. It happens sometimes.
Okay. We can, Kimberly, are you able to admit them? I think
Yes.
they're in the waiting room.
I will admit them.
Okay.
Sorry for the technical difficulty, folks. We'll get you in a room. And, oh, there it is.
There we go.
Nailed
All right.
it.
Monique, what time are they coming out of the rooms?
I did not see an option to put a time. I know you can. So I can close the rooms in 8 minutes.
Probably like more like 6 right now.
6.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that there's at least some time at the end for general Q&A. So, thank you.
I'm interested to hear their answers. I'm an alumni of the OLL program, and that program does something that I assume is a little different. We come together as one cohort and write a class charter that we all agree to. That seems more like a contract on the surface than the syllabus does. So I can't wait to see what they say as prospective students who haven't had that experience yet.
No, it's a very interesting question. And there are several nuances that I left out that I hope they pick up on. The fact that the offerer of the syllabus, who's the professor, typically has the ability to modify the syllabus even after you accept it, right? So that sort of defeats the typical contract as well, which may make it a little different than the OLL charter, but we'll see if they pick it up. You know, it takes a little bit to digest, but because it's relevant to everyday life, I knew that it's something that every student would be able to chew into a little bit. So hopefully, you know, they take it and they join us. You know, there's so many other considerations, but you know, we try to do our best. Slightly smaller group than we expected. We are recording this, right?
Yes, but we'll cut this part out.
No, it doesn't matter to me. I just wanted to make sure that anyone that couldn't do it will still have the opportunity to access it. Yeah, John seems to keep getting cut out. Don't know if it's his internet
I hope I can get Zoom fixed before the fall.
Well, hopefully we won't be on Zoom in the fall. But
very
I
true.
like your thinking.
Yeah, very true.
I like your thinking.
Yeah, it kicks me out all the time.
Oh, this is a recurring problem?
Yeah, when during the work week, I normally have to call into meetings because my computer just won't let me log on to meetings. It's horrible.
No, I had a computer like that. It was 5 years old, and I just had to get a new one. I had to suck it up because not suggesting that you do that, but
no, I'm about in the same boat. It was it might be in my future here soon.
Yeah.
But
Kimberly, can we get John for just the last session back into a room? I'm sure he has a lot to contribute. I just don't want him to sit out here with us old folks.
Okay, the invitation should be to you, John, to join a breakout room.
I think he might be frozen.
I think so.
Oh, man. Yeah, I was in this same situation not just a month ago where, the computer was just not cooperating, and I taxed it so much. I think he's coming back on the phone.
Yeah, he's back in the waiting room, but I think we just have maybe one more minute.
Yeah, we only have 3 more minutes left. So.
okay, now I'm on the phone.
So John, we'll try to put you in a room, but to be honest, we only have maybe just 2 or 3 more minutes left.
That's all right. Yeah, no problem.
Thanks for being such a good sport about this. We apologize.
Okay, yes, he is in the room now.
So if we could start pulling them out right at 3:43, because then it takes about a minute for them to get out. And then hopefully I can get just 1 or 2 groups to kind of give their thoughts, leaving whatever time I can for just general Q&A. And I know they have access to both of you for that. I just, didn't want to not give them that opportunity.
Okay, I'm sending them a message that says 1 more minute.
Thank you. All right, whenever you're ready, Monique.
Okay, I will go and close all rooms now.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Welcome back. We hope that you had some stimulating conversation in your breakout groups, which probably more represent the class size that we offer here at GSEHD. So I hope that you were able not just to discuss this topic, but get to know some of your future colleagues a little bit. As soon as we get everyone back, I'll hear what your answers are. Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back. Hope your group conversation went well. Can't wait to hear from some of you about your ideas. And correct me if I'm wrong, Monique, it looks like we've got the group back. Is that about accurate?
That's correct.
All right, folks. So before the commercial break, so to speak, we went over the elements of a contract. We said legally what the elements of a contract are, or offer, an acceptance of that offer on identical terms as it was offered, and consideration, which is a bargain for exchange. And we analyzed whether the college admissions offer was a contract. We said yes. Well, it depends, but on the most circumstances, it fits the elements. And then we asked you to investigate in small groups, is the course syllabus a contract based on the elements? Is the course syllabus a contract based on the elements? I don't know if the groups had leaders or scribes, but we probably have time for about 2 groups to tell me what their answer is based on the elements. So why don't we get the first representative of the first group? What's your answer to the question based on what you've learned today? Is the course syllabus a contract? Anyone? Don't be shy. There's literally no right answer. This is literally a question that's being discussed right now amongst legal scholars, educational scholars, superintendents, etc. So, you know, whatever you say, I guarantee it will sound educated and we can work with it. Anyone?
Jessica's raising her hand.
Okay.
Yeah, so James is also in my group. We came to the conclusion, we were pretty much all in agreement that it is a contract. We kind of identified all the elements of like the offer and the acceptance and consideration, because where the professor kind of sets like, here are like the requirements for the classes and like the course load and everything, like you have your program already kind of, you know, laid out, and then in turn, like you accept that. And a lot of times there's also agreements to in terms of like how to behave in class and in terms of like getting your assignments in on time. And for that, I would sorry, I'm like tongue-tied.
We get what you're going, yeah.
Yeah, but there is that still that flexibility where you can make a change anytime. Jen was saying that like in her experience, professors usually like put something at the bottom that says like they reserve the right to, you know, extend or change certain elements of the timeline. So yeah, so we were kind of in agreement, but we also said that not all contracts are necessarily good or equal. We kind of felt that, you know, the university kind of has more of like a greater advantage.
Definitely in more bargaining control, right?
Right.
Than the student can, right? Different offers. Okay. So bottom line for me, Jessica, your group, yes, the course syllabus is a contract. All right.
Yes.
Let me hear from one other group.
Dr. Wright, this is Chris from DC. Well, I'm not from DC, but I live in DC currently, and I worked at GW. Our group basically came to the consensus that a course syllabus is not a contract. We looked at it more as an agenda. One of our group members said there was an agenda that the professor sets, or more so the rules and regulations of the course. So, you know, you could have a student to follow the syllabus and do well, but you could have students to not follow and do poorly in the class. So that's how we came up with that.
All right. So we've got one for yay, one for nay. Let's just do a round robin for as many as possible. I'll give you 60 seconds. Let's do individual votes. Is the course syllabus a contract? Yes or no? Let's light up the chat room with yays or nays. Let me see if we can get a consensus. I'm seeing a lot of yeses or no. Okay. Madeline, I see you. Okay, it depends. Zach caught that real quick. Okay. All right, let's see how I would analyze this based on the elements, right? So the first element of a contract, what's necessary is an offer, right? So is there something offered for some type of price? So some evidence on the yay side, there is something offered, right? You get a piece of paper that outlines what the course has in it. The question, I think, is there something of value that is offered in exchange, right? Maybe your time, maybe your attendance, but you've already paid for that, right? You've earned that. So some might say, while there is an offer here, it's an offer of a thing or a service, a teaching, but the price is in the admissions contract, not necessarily at the course level. So maybe that for that reason, it's not a contract. Let's say for the sake of argument, we get past the offer. Is there acceptance? Remember, for a contract to be a contract, there must be an offer and then acceptance of it on like terms, right? So you get the syllabus, and I think what Jessica said, as far as the acceptance comes, most syllabus, 99.9% of syllabi will have something that says subject to change. Subject to change. So the question is, and this is a legal theory question, there's no real good answer to it. Is it really a contract when I don't know when I'm accepting? It may be on week 6 that we're dealing with minoritized populations in counseling. It may be on week 6, something happens, we need to throw that out. It may be on week 6, we don't even have week 6 because the professor decides that it needs to go, or he, she, or they need to go to a conference, right? So I think, you know, the most problematic area of saying that the course syllabus is a contract is probably in that acceptance, right? However, if it is an offer and it is accepted on like terms, and let's just say this is the professor that wants their syllabus to be a contract, so they don't put the line in there, it's subject to change, this is it, and if you don't do it, you can, I don't know what's the remedy? Poor evaluations, right? I think where the rubber meets the road is really consideration, right? What exactly is the professor saying they promise to do in exchange for what do you promise to do, right? It's not that you're promising to do the assignments. It's not that they're promising to keep the assignments the way they are, because even for a professor that's trying to make the syllabus a contract, might need to modify the contract. There's no greater example than this than spring 2020 and COVID-19. Spring 2020 and COVID-19. Even if I wanted my syllabus to be a contract, there were necessary modifications that could not be negotiated between myself and the students to get us online. So based on that analysis, I would go with Chris's group and say that the syllabus is not a contract, even though Jessica, I really like the analysis that you and your group did as well. Any questions? Any questions on that analysis? Any questions? Any final questions before we go to general Q&A on contracts? Anything in the chat, Monique? All right, well, listen, folks, before we transition to general Q&A, just know that this is one part of a GW experience. I think that if you do come here, what you'll get are reasonably sized classes, you'll get a killer networking experience, and you'll get one of the premier knowledge exchange experiences in the world. We here offer a premier faculty, a premier environment, and a premier challenge that once you go through this program, you'll be productive and you'll be ready and you'll be able to compete with anybody. I don't care where they graduate, Harvard, Stanford, it doesn't matter, in this emerging workforce. So I hope that I was able to give you just a glimpse of what you might offer if you join us in the fall or in the summer, all right? And now what I wanna do is I wanna, with Kimberly's and Monique's help, transition to general Q&A. General Q&A. I am a professor here, most of the director of diversity. I sit in higher education, which is in the Department of Dell, but I have familiarity with all of our other departments. Are there any general questions that you have for myself, for Monique or Kimberly before we close out here today? No question is bad. The only bad question is the one that you want to ask and you don't.
What is your favorite thing about being a professor at GSEHD?
My students, hands down, without question, some of the best in the world.
Can I ask you a question, Dr. Wright?
Please.
So in your classes, when you, let's say if a student doesn't follow your syllabus or anything on your syllabus or any particular doesn't adhere whatever you want to be in your classes, how do you go about it? Is that any are they breaking any law being in in your class or anything?
No. First of all, everyone that comes into the graduate school by virtue of being graduate students are adults. You make your own decisions. We work with you. We know you're working hard. There's students that sometimes can't make it to class. There's students that sometimes can't get a big assignment and we need to give, special dispensation to get reductions or extensions. And we work with you here. We're building professionals. We're not building robots. So if you can't do something, it's not gonna, there's no syllabus jail. The other thing that I do in my courses, Cement, is that I actually have the class come together at the beginning and they have the ability to change anything they want in the syllabus. I have the ability to say no, but they have the ability to request any changes that they want. So as soon as we get past the first day, it's the class's syllabus, not mine. So,
but something that you said that you said that course syllabus is not a contract.
In my legal opinion, that could be wrong.
Okay, thank you.
Good. Further questions?
I had kind of like a random, it's kind of related.
I love those two, random or not, come on.
But you talk a lot from like an American perspective where here, there's a little more rigidity for some of these like legal things, but in certain cultures, sometimes it's just a handshake, sometimes like not even that is respected. So in your like personal experience and opinion, like how would you try to enforce a contract when there might not be as much?
So, even though I do talk from an American perspective and I'm an American lawyer, I wasn't born here. I was born in Trinidad and Tobago, spent some time in both Venezuela and Brazil. Was a former undocumented person before I came to New York, changed that, and eventually graduated. So I understand a lot of different cultures. And one of the things I appreciate about GSEHD is you get exposed to those different cultures. How would I enforce it? It depends what the evidence says, right? Was there a written agreement? If there weren't a written agreement, the parties do things after that showed that at least one party thought there was an agreement. What would be the consequence, both to this contract and contracts that come after, in not holding this to be a contract? All of those things, Jessica, would be factors that if I were either an advocate, a lawyer, or a judge deciding if a contract that would go into making that decision. Good question. Further questions? Remember, the only bad question is the one that you want to ask, but you don't.
I have a question about the courses in the grad school. So one of the complaints I had about Penn State was my courses, they weren't very diverse and we didn't learn a lot about like race, ethnicity, like gender identity, anything like that. How would you say like George Washington implements those sort of topics in courses, or do they?
Yeah, so not to bash on what's both eventually our alma maters, but Penn State and George Washington, that concept is night and day, right? We sit right in the heart of the nation's capital. We are at the heart of creating policy and business. So we have to be diverse, I think, for us to survive. I think the way it's integrated, first of all, into every program, and we try to integrate it a little bit into every course, right? There will be some courses that you can take either as electives or you will have to take as mandatory courses, which bring those issues of race, gender, sexuality, socioeconomic status to the forefront. And then there might be instances in which professors will invite you to interject that into a course that TUFIT might not actually think about it, right? Everyone that wants to be at least a PhD or an ED student has to take a statistics course. That statistics course could be just the percentage of people in DC that are graduating, or it could be the percentage of transgender females that are graduating post-COVID-19, right? So you have the ability to interject it. The other thing I will say as a director of diversity is that our programming and our co-curricular offerings are one thing that we will rely on to supplement and scaffold your education in the classroom. So for example, within, I think next week, we're about to have a professor come from the University of North Carolina Law School to talk about how she would apply antitrust law, which is being used to fight Amazon, to fight segregated school districts in the South. there's no class that this is attached to, but as a student at GSEHD, this is something that you'll be exposed to on a monthly, sometimes even weekly basis to enhance your education. So I think that if that was your complaint at Penn State, that's unfortunate. We need to, you know, as alumni of Penn State, do something about that, but that will not be an issue, I can guarantee you, here at GSEHD. We're at 4, but this is fun. Final questions? I don't got anywhere to go for the next 2 or 3 minutes. Any final questions? Anyone?
Okay. My question is a little bit different from others, maybe. And I want to know if you have any strategy or any means of helping international students to join this university, because so many international students have so many challenges from back home, even to get their documents fully from back home. So they have so many things, I think, to join this university. How do you help those people really to be successful in this program?
Yeah, so I think first and foremost, when you do get here, we have things in place to help you be successful. We have an international student group, and the Office of Student Life, led by our director, Laura Hannon, will be on there to help you accommodate. I hear your question more though, how can you help us actually get there? And for that, I'll defer to Monique and Kimberly, not because I can't answer the question, but it's, you know, I don't think I'm saying anything that you don't know. It's such a unique situation. Every country is different. Every student circumstance is different. So I would say if you're having particular difficulties, please email Monique, please email Kimberly. Feel free to CC me as well, and we'll get into exactly what we need to do to try to get you there. You know, I do apologize on behalf of America, I guess, for how difficult we have made it, particularly over the last couple of years. But we at GSEHD are here to try to do our best. It might not be anything that we can solve, unfortunately, but we're here to do our best.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Wright is absolutely correct on all of those points. We are happy to help you on the admission side as much as we can as an international student, and we also have the GW-wide ISO, International Student Office. But on top of that, Dr. Wright mentioned the student group that we have at GSEHD for international students. It's called Prime. It's really awesome. It's just for our students at GSEHD, and what we have created is kind of a mentorship program where we pair incoming international students with existing students who have already been through it all, and they're there to help you with some of the common hurdles or just help you get acclimated to life as a GSEHD student. So you'll get tons of information about that once you accept your offer of admissions and get connected with student services. But in the meantime, as Dr. Wright mentioned, please feel free to reach out to us for more specific concerns.
So I just saw that there are a lot of engaging questions in the chat. Please do feel free to reach out to Monique and Kimberly. I know a lot of universities say that, but we make an extra special effort to try to get back. If there are any DEI questions about our events, please feel free to email me. I'm about 2 or 3 days behind on email, but I guarantee I will get to you at some point if there are any questions or concerns. And I think in just closing, I will say, I really hope to have all of you here with us here in the fall. I think you'll find it to be an engaging atmosphere. I think you'll be a good balance of both challenge and support. And we're going to strive to make you a better person and a better professional by the time you leave here at GSEHD. We are a bit of a smaller school, which means that we're a family, right? And we truly hope that, welcoming you to our family, whether it be this summer or this fall, is something that we'll have the pleasure of doing. All right. There are no other questions. I have a student waiting, but this has been wonderful. Monique and Kimberly, thank you for the opportunity. To all the students and prospectives here, I hope to talk to you again real soon. All right.
Thank you.
No,
Thanks,
thank you.
everybody.
Hi, everyone.
Thank you.